Thanks, Rach. And let's return to Greg Jennett in Canberra. And Greg, it's the final sitting fortnight for the year.
Yes, and the issues around here are pretty familiar. We've been discussing them already this hour, Gemma, and we're going to explore that a little further now with our panel of MPs. And joined in the studio here, Gemma, by Tim Wilson, Liberal MP, and by Stephen Jones from Labor. Welcome to both of you. Just before we launch into our conversation, it won't surprise any viewer that we're going to start off on foreign interference. Just to flag that Sarah Hanson-Young, the Senator, has flagged that she will make some public remarks here. That's due in about 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll interrupt our conversation at that point. We'll listen to a little bit of what she's got to say, then discuss the issue, actually, of politicians and defamation with both of you. So until we get there, Tim Wilson, some of these claims about Chinese foreign interference actually hit very close to home for you, a Victorian Liberal, with these claims of trying to stand up a Liberal MP candidate to win the seat of Chisholm. Does any of this ring true to you, based on your knowledge and familiarity of the party in that part of the world?
No, I think anyone who wants to draw those connections will find they'll be arguing a baseless case. What this is about is the attempt, or the allegation of the attempt by foreign interference to try and get a candidate up through political processes, including an election, to get elected to Parliament. Now, I don't believe that would have happened in our party whatsoever. I think it shows a naivete, frankly, on behalf, if that is true, that allegation is true about how democratic processes work inside the Liberal Party. But
it's sufficiently credible for ASIO to be examining it still and to have taken the unprecedented step of saying so.
Well, what matters here is the attempt by, or the allegations, the attempt by foreign agents to try and influence our political processes. Now, which party and which process they picked is completely irrelevant. These are deeply disturbing allegations. We've introduced strong foreign interference transparency mechanisms, as well as around electoral integrity processes, to deal exactly with these types of challenges. But it reminds you that the challenge is not going to go away. It's not going away, and we have to remain vigilant.
It may not be going away, Stephen Jones, because it's not just the Liberal Party in Victoria that's being touched by it. We could use the word burnt by it. So has your very own party in your very own state. So both sides are being tainted by this. I want to put to you a question that puts
just take that.
Sure.
Facts are scant. We know the guy was a Liberal Party activist. We know that he was interested in pre-selection at some stage. We know that he's made some allegations, and we know that ASIO are treating them serious. So there is something there. I've got to say this.
Can we just clarify? It's the bloke who was killed who was in that situation.
Yes, I understand.
Not some sort of Manchurian candidate.
Can I just make this point? China, quite rightly, is fiercely independent of its own sovereignty. If this is true, you can imagine that the Australian people would feel the same sort of outrage as China quite rightly would if there was the same sort of interference going on inside their internal processes. Totally unacceptable.
Sure. The role of money is not inconsequential here. In New South Wales...
This is going... Sorry to interrupt. This is going a step further. This is not about money. This is not about donations. This is about saying, we will put you in and you will be our guy.
It was, with what's said to be a seven-figure amount of money to run what I assume would be the candidate's campaign after successful pre-selection, which has its own challenges, as Tim would attest. But that's where the similarities cross over between Labor's experience in New South Wales.
Sorry, can I just... This is fantasy world stuff. What we had is a bloke who was approached by the CCP, allegedly, to become a candidate to run for Parliament.
How do you know?
He actually then went, according to newspaper reports, and told ASIO and said, this is what's going on. By comparison, you have the Australian Labor Party, where we've had Aldi bags of money
we don't know what's going on.
Drawing comparisons and equivalents is just a fantasy.
Well, I do so for this purpose, because we're just keeping an eye on Sarah Hanson-Young there. She hasn't started yet. I do so for this reason, because it leads to the question, has been raised by many over the years, donations, public funding. Do you see a case, as all this bubbles away in federal politics, to switch to a fully publicly funded campaign finance model in Australia?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think the current process of corporate donations to either the Liberal Party, the Labor Party or any other party, independents for that matter, I think the largest individual donation went to the Greens in the last 2 elections. I do think it's a cancer on democracy.
You reckon you can get it up as Labor Party policy?
It's seriously debated within Labor Party forums. It's seriously debated within Labor Party forums, and the current review of New South Wales seriously being debated.
The more so now, do you think the Lavarch review of New South Wales Labor could actually land your party? I know you've got to have debates internally and all of this, but it could land you around that as a policy proposition.
Recommendations have gone up to Michael Lavarch and to others. It has been debated in our party conferences before now, so it is not a new idea. It is one, I think, whose time will come.
Right.
Because I think the public at large are sick of the perception of corporate control over politics and money politics. They want a new way.
All right, Tim Wilson, you can see now the reason why I sort of drew the parallels here. Whether you accept them or not, that's where our discussion led. What's your own attitude to this sort of model, backed by Stephen?
Well, firstly, I just want to stress this point, which is where there is an allegation on the basis of this story, what you had was the party member in question taking the responsible path of action and reporting it to ASIO, and then, if you believe the allegation, it then ended up being killed. By comparison, the issue that has plagued the New South Wales division of the Labor Party is where people have knowingly done the wrong thing, whether it be having their credit card bills being paid off or whether it's the situation with Aldi bags of money being delivered. I don't believe that's a case for suddenly chucking all of the cost of elections onto the taxpayer. I believe that's a case that Labor should obey the law.
It would disadvantage you personally enormously, I imagine, Tim, in this respect. I mean, you were very well backed by the finance industry in the last election. Very well.
Again, this
very
is,
well backed.
Where is this fantasy coming from?
It's not a fantasy.
And to draw this parallel, I just find really...
We need to take money out of politics.
We have a bloke who was allegedly killed on foreign interference, and it should be treated with the seriousness in which it deserves, not to try and draw political equivalence.
Nobody's trying.
Let's just talk about the issue, because Malcolm Turnbull, in fact, prior to his prime ministership, as I recall, was an advocate for full public financing, but you just don't like the idea? Well,
no, I just don't think we should be passing all the costs off the taxpayer. I believe that when it comes to electoral financing, there's always a discussion about what can be done, how we can tweak, but I have no issue with people actually having to stump up and make the case about why there is a candidate they deserve support. And to just say, no, we're going to entrench the privilege of existing parties, we're going to make sure that it basically is only ever a contest between the existing candidates, I think is wrong.
And it would do that, wouldn't it, Stephen, when you move to, say, a full extension beyond the model we already have, which is, was it $2 something per vote? It does inevitably favour the majors.
No, I think we're very quickly moving. We have moved to the situation where you can just about buy an election. We've moved to the situation where money wins votes, where money wins paid TV time, where money wins advertising and campaign time. And we're very, very close to a situation where the richest person wins. And I really don't want to be involved. I don't want Australian democracy to be distorted, to be corrupted.
What possible evidence do you have for that ridiculous statement?
A guy by the name of Clive Palmer.
Yeah, he got 0 seats.
No,
zero.
Is that
zero.
Yes, but in the last 3 weeks, of his campaign, he said, "Don't vote for Bill." He converted all of his TV advertising into anti-Labor. You were the beneficiary. You were the beneficiary of that, Tim, and you know it full well. I understand why you don't want to get rid of big money politics. You don't want to get rid of big money politics because you guys are the net beneficiary of that.
I'll tell you what.
Democracy is what
you accept
suffers.
massive $1 million donations from the trade union movement.
Me personally,
then you'll have credibility. Well, you made a series of allegations against my candidacy, which are all false. And if the Labor Party was serious, they would stop taking hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars from the trade union movement if they don't want this. The reality is elections should be contestable. Everybody should have an equal participation and a right to be able to participate, and we shouldn't be entrenched in the existing position of established parties.
We have a situation now where you can buy an election. Somebody like Clive Palmer can sink $80 million into an election campaign, but don't determine the outcome in over 30 of them.
All right, well, let's just park that debate.
The outcome in over 30 of them.
I suspect we haven't heard the end of it, but since Tim Wilson mentions the trade union movement...
Why are you so upset about... Get Up, then. If they had Get Up didn't want it. Get Up didn't win a seat either. Why are
They
you
didn't
guys so
stand
head up about Get Up? They did not win a seat, but you seem to think that their money and their influence
not sure they're a
the
registered
outcomes in
Democrat.
other
They're not a
parties.
registered political party, and they didn't stand candidates.
All right, but let's move on
What do
because
you
you've
want?
given us a cue. You've given us a cue, Tim
I'm on to
Wilson,
you.
to move on to the trade union movement and I suppose corporate Australia. Both are kind of becoming enmeshed in our conversation here. Why is it, and we had questions asked about this in question time today, why is it that things are proceeding, slowly but purposefully, I suppose, on the Westpac breaches while the government ploughs headlong into this ensuring integrity bill?
Because we already have laws in place to deal specifically with the issues and around AUSTRAC and Westpac. They already exist. And what we're doing is going through a process of making sure there's a full investigation so that if charges are brought, then they will be done so under existing law. With the Ensuring Integrity Bill, what we're trying to do is make sure that those people who are in trade union movement who are committing crimes or committing serious breaches of the law are held accountable.
That's fair enough, isn't it, Stephen? I mean, we do have a regime around AUSTRAC, around APRA, around the banking, the BEAR, as they call it, the accountability regime. What's wrong with matching that up with a model that sits over the trade union movement?
Before I get to that, I want to deal with the substance of the allegations. 38 million individual breaches by Westpac. This story has dragged on for close to a week now. I don't think the CEO's position is tenable. In fact, I think there's positions within the board are no longer tenable either. It is a drag on the institution. Look, it's not just a management failure, and AUSTRAC were quite clear about this. It is not just a management failure, it is a failure of governance. So I saw the board today, last night, announced that they were going to
withhold some
hire
bonuses?
No, they're going to hire a consultant. They don't need a consultant, they need a mirror, because there were failures of governance and failures of management, and there needs to be accountability on both sides.
Well, you've heard the call there, Tim, from Stephen. You have high visibility on all of this stuff because of your role in the Parliament.
I asked Westpac
would you
about
match it?
So I asked Westpac about these issues in their last appearance, which was only about 2 weeks ago. But actually, I just want to get to the facts of the matter. What Westpac did was they self-reported these breaches, and that was the right thing to do. There should be accountability on behalf of the board and the management, and I think once we get to the bottom of the data, the facts of what happened, I think there should be accountability.
But we have a publicly elected individual in Stephen prepared to say, I've seen enough, I'm done. I think these people should be disqualified.
Can I explain?
I'm just
I'm not
wondering
rushing
why
to
you
judgment.
aren't there yet, but anyway.
I'm not rushing to Westpac have put their hands up and said, yes, we did this. So there's not a question about whether it happened. They've put their hands up and said, yes, we have committed these 38 million crimes. And we also know through the admitted facts that they knew for a considerable period of time, which enabled pederasts to use their platforms to pay for the abuse of children.
So why does
in another
accountability
country.
mean you leap straight to you lost your job over this?
Because the head of the organisation has to take account for what's gone on inside of his organisation, and because of what AUSTRAC have said in their report and their review, failures of management and failures of governance of both. That's why there has to be accountability at the management and at the board level.
And if that's where the pieces fall, Tim Wilson, would you be satisfied with that?
Well, of course, but that's why establishing the facts, you're right, Westpac did self-report. They have gone through and accepted responsibility. There does need to be accountability, but frankly, I think there should be accountability for the former management, the former directors who were in the roles at the time that this occurred. And I think that's actually...
We may not have an argument on that.
I think one of the most scandalous things is that a lot of those people seem to be overlooked in this discussion.
Well, you'll probably get an opportunity if some of these chief executives are still around to ask further questions. When would that next be due, you reckon?
They're not due till the middle of next year.
Yep.
We only had them about 3 weeks ago where we asked specifically about these issues.
Fair enough. Well, look, time is running out for us. The network's still sort of holding around the Sarah Hanson-Young event as well. So we're going to say thank you and farewell to Tim Wilson and to Stephen Jones.